Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Antique Camera Wars with Mr. Solomon. Today we're going to look at this vest pocket folding Kodak camera. So that's a camera made by Kodak and it's called the Vest Pocket Kodak. So let's have a look at it first. So we have the top view, underside, the rear view, the front view, the left side profile and the right side profile. This is a stunning little camera, and to give you an idea of the size, here's a Lego piece. These really are beautiful small compact cameras, very popular at the start of the 20th century. They're often called the soldier's camera. These cameras were first manufactured in 1913 and Kodak continued with this type of camera until about 1926. So this is a close-up view of the front of the camera. We have our shutter speed here, so that's how fast we take a photo. Small lever to allow us to do that. Notice that even on this camera we have B for bulb. We have some information telling us about the type of shutter used on this camera, so that's this area here, this whole control face. We can see it was made at least after 1913. We have our shutter mechanism inside here, which I can show you. So remember, this is what opens and closes to allow the light in. At the moment I have it on B for bulb, which means it stays open until I tell it to close. We can also set it to a 25th of a second or 50th of a second. And down here we have some slightly strange words. We have clouds, marine, distant view, average view, near view and portrait. What do you think they could be for? I'll give you a clue. We know our shutter speed is controlled up here, so what does that leave down here? In fact, I'll give you another clue. Watch this. Can you see that? What's that? That's right, it's aperture. It controls how much light can come into the camera. So for example, if you're taking a portrait of someone and you want your background to be blurred, you'll want to allow lots of light in. If you're taking an image of a landscape, and you want everything to be in detail, we want to let less light in, which will increase the amount of focus in the image. So I'm really impressed that this camera has that function, even though it's well over 100 years old. By the way, this is the logo for the Eastman Kodak company. We have a small folding silver leg. This allows the camera to stand upright, like so. It also has, on the back, a serial number, so I can date this camera. And if I look on the back, I can also tell you this camera was made in Canada by the Canadian Kodak Company Limited in Toronto. We have even more information here embossed into the back of the camera. I'm not going to read all of this because a lot of it is legal information. This camera was made at a time when cameras were very popular, and Kodak wanted to make sure that other competing companies didn't copy their design. So they printed this information on all their products to protect it from being copied or their ideas stolen. I'm sure if you wanted to read this, you could find this information online. If you choose to look this camera up online, make sure you search for the Vest Pocket Kodak. Remember, it was made in Canada and it is an autographic model. Now this is really exciting because what is an autograph? An autograph is where you write your name. It's where you sign something. So why would we have that on a camera? If we read this, it gives us a bit of a clue. Use autographic film number A-127. Now I don't have any A127 film, but we do know that film looks something a bit like this. So imagine a slightly larger film that when loaded in the camera appears here, and you can then write your name or a message or the date on the back of your photo. At the time, this technology was unbelievable. Next time you see an old photo of a message on the back, it might have been made with one of these cameras. We're going to close that now to protect it. So this camera has been in my family for over 100 years. They didn't buy it in Canada, it was sailed over as an export. So although it was made in Canada, it was sold in the UK. We're not sure, but we think this camera belonged to my great-grandmother. She probably bought it in London and then brought it back down to Hampshire. Cameras that fold down like this are called folding Bellows cameras. They allow the camera to be compressed or condensed into a much smaller sized object that can then fit inside your pocket. When needed, they can simply be unfolded to their full size and used. Whilst looking at this camera from the top view, you'll notice the shutter release button, which I pushed earlier. That click is the sound it makes when it releases the shutter mechanically. We get a really good view of the leather bellows. Remember, they're very fragile. That's why I'm wearing gloves. And we can also see our viewfinder. Again, this works slightly like a periscope. There is a small mirror at a 45-degree angle inside that small compartment, which allows me to look down and see the view through this small lens. At the moment, the camera is set up to take a photo in a portrait orientation. If I want to switch this to a landscape orientation, I can simply turn the camera 90 degrees and switch the viewfinder around. By turning it on its side, we now have a really good view of this scissor mechanism that allows the camera to fold so neatly. Without this, the camera would be all floppy and it would fall apart. There's a couple of interesting things here. We have a handle that allows us to wind the film on. Remember, it was type A 127 orthographic film. So every time you take a photo, you'd wind this, ready to take your next photo. We also have a small switch which says open and lock. If I carefully switch this to the open setting, I can carefully remove the top of the camera. Unlike some of the other cameras I've shown you, the back of this camera cannot be opened. So instead, film is loaded through the top. We have our metal spool here on which the film would be loaded. You can see the difference in size between this 35mm film and the 127 film that's needed. And it also shows you how neatly this mechanism folds together. So there you are, the Vest Pocket Kodak. In my next video, I'm going to show you this camera. It's quite big. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.
Mr. Solomon, welcome to his class. Today you're going to learn some photography, not economic geography. Take a seat. Make sure your work is not incomplete. Before you go in class, make sure your shoes are neat, just like Mr. Solomon's feet.